Good morning, or good afternoon, or whatever time of the day you watch this. I am making this recording to go over the prompt for Bhutto. I've had some complaints from people going into the Writing and Reading Center from my class who say that the prompt is confusing. So I thought I would try to make something to help. I am at this moment working at the Writing and Reading Center, so if I click off and click on, it'll just be part of what I have to do. Alright, so in Module 3, we have some example research papers. And first let me double check the prompt. First draft workshop. I have to move this box a little bit. Okay, so for the Bhutto prompt. Bhutto says that dictators who are favored by the West help extremists, especially by uniting them in their dislike of the United States. How do dictators help the causes of extremists in Muslim countries? Bhutto talks a good deal about Afghanistan and the Taliban. Research the situation in Afghanistan since the Russian invasion. Then decide whether the West must bear a share of the responsibility for the presence of dictators in Muslim countries. And mind you, I'm trying to look at all of the first drafts and give you feedback, but there aren't that many up yet. So I try not to let people flounder in frustration and confusion. The thesis statement should respond to as much of this prompt, this assignment, these questions that come after the number 4, all the words that start with Bhutto and end with countries. That's the prompt. A prompt is an assignment. It is the ideas and questions that a writer writes about. Okay. So it usually in your thesis statement, you'll start with a hook as the how to write a 5-paragraph essay explained in Module 1. You'll start with a hook, say something that gets right to the point and is interesting, and then your thesis statement, which is best placed in the last sentence of the introduction, will address as much of, answer as many of these questions as is possible. And if there's anything that you leave out, then you can refer to that and address it in a body paragraph. Okay. So now I'm going to go to the example essays. Example research essays. There's one on Thoreau and there's one on Bhutto. The prompt is not at the top. Maybe I should have put it at the top, but it's right. It's right in our minds. I just read it. Benazir Bhutto was a very influential figure in the world of politics. Well, that's good because it introduces the subject. Her father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Good, because he wrote the Constitution for Pakistan. Born into a political family, Benazir was not sheltered from the harsh realities of an unstable government. She saw firsthand what it took to run a government and felt democracy was attainable in her country. Okay, that gets right to the point, and it's easy to understand. Reconciliation. In her book, Reconciliation, Bhutto addresses the West's responsibility of keeping democracy out of Pakistan. Actually, it should be 4, but this is a student essay, so it's not perfect. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. It's going to be an example of an A. So this person got an A. Okay, so in her book, Reconciliation, Bhutto addresses the West's responsibility for keeping democracy out of Pakistan. Bhutto's decision to use Afghanistan and the Taliban as examples of why the West must bear a share of the responsibility for the presence of dictators in Muslim countries is supported by the fact the United States supported dictatorships, monarchies, and unethical presidents. It aided and funded terrorist regimes, and it has been unsupportive of human rights in the Mideast. This is a really strong thesis statement because it directly answers the prompt and takes a position. So now as the reader, I expect that the writer is going to show me how this is true. And that is in fact what happens. Okay, now I will show you another essay that addresses this prompt because we don't all have to do it the same way. Okay. Here's the first paragraph. Goes over to the next page. And this person did put the prompt at the top, which is really a great idea. It's helpful to you, so you can reread the prompt, and it's helpful to the tutor, so the tutor can see, oh, this is what the student writer is writing about. This is the prompt that the student is addressing. Afghan refugees first went to Pakistan after the Soviet troops invaded Afghanistan in December 1979. It was a scene of sorrow and sadness, one in which refugee parents walked on foot with their children in one hand, carrying any other belongings they could manage in the other, while narrowly, quote, escaping bombs, rockets, and gunfire from Russian helicopter gunships. And she gave the quotation. Hold on a second. Okay. There have been many waves of internal refugee displacements from internal and external conflict over the last 40 years, causing fleeing refugees to be constantly on the run. Many refugees attempt to return to their homeland, but were almost always unable to do so successfully. It would be better if it were, but have almost always been unable to do so successfully. Present perfect tense. Mainly because when they have returned home, they have returned to a place that was no longer secure, that was economically poor, a place that lacked social infrastructure, and in which their livelihood has been destroyed by an ongoing civil war. So my little issue was with tenses, and usually you can hear those better if you read it out loud. Anyways, the thoughts are excellent. Dictators support extremists, who essentially cannot decide with whom to share the power with. That should be with whom to share the power. The fight for power causes internal and external uprisings, resulting in an ongoing civil war. So this is, yes, she's stating the hypothetical case that happens when there is that kind of strife in a country that causes people to run away. Benazir Bhutto would agree that since the Russian invasion, dictators who are favored by the West facilitate extremists by uniting them in their dislike of the United States. So this student has approached the topic in a slightly different manner, but nonetheless has taken a stand. And you notice that the hook that the student used had to do with refugees, with why people are driven out of a country and how the strife inside a country can cause them to do so, and how, and then she ends with her basic premise or her basic statement that the West facilitates that. It facilitates what extremists are doing by, and in this case, she's taken a slightly different position, by uniting them in their dislike of the United States. And that's fine. You can come at a prompt from a different position as long as you support it. The student did support it, and the student got an A. I don't necessarily even have to agree with what you're saying, as long as you can support your thesis statement, which addresses the prompt. So the title and the thesis statement are going to reflect an answer to the questions asked in the prompt. And if you get your first draft up, then I can have a look and give you some feedback on whether you're going in the right direction. I will try to do the same thing now for the Thoreau Mexican-American War.